I wanted to talk a little bit about how to set up a stretch elastic and apply it to a stretch lace, and how to calculate the gathering ratio for the project that you're working on. So here I have a stretch lace. It's got a little bit of a rubber band applied to it to grab the body a bit. And I have a piece of stretch lace. Okay, this is a tulle with an embroidered pattern on it. Now, if you look at my pins here, I've set up in this 12-inch span, I've set up a set of ratios, which we're going to talk about now. So if I'm going to apply this elastic onto the lace at a ratio of 100%, not much is happening. If I change the ratio by pulling 10% away, which leaves me 90% of elastic to 100% of lace, you can see that this gathering ratio is going to give you just a light ripple of gathers. If we go to 80%, you can see what happens. A lot more gathering, a lot more ripple effect. And let's just have a look at 70, which may not be a good move, but you may want something like a very heavily gathered elastic waistline to go over the hip, so you're going to need more fullness. So 70% might work for you. I'm going to show you now how to apply this elastic, and we're going to use the 80% ratio. We're going to be working right here. So I'll be right back once I've sorted this all out. So we've decided that we want to gather a 12-inch section of lace into an 80% section of elastic. So we've got 12 inches here, and we've got just over 9.5 of elastic to stretch on to the 12 inches of lace. So the first thing I've done is I've set this up in quarters. So I've divided the lace into 3-inch sections. I've got 3, 6, 9, and 12. I'm going to do the same thing with the elastic. I've got just over 9.5 inches, and I've divided this in 4. First in half, and then each half in half again. Now, what is left to do is to sew this on. I'm just going to do this freehand. You can pin this in place, and you can take a lot more time. I'm just going to show you how this is done, and I'm going to do 2 rows of stitching, but I'm going to start on the top edge. Okay, so I've got a bit of a decorative edge on the top of this elastic. I'm going to start with 1 back stitch. Now I'm using a gathering stitch. I'm using a long stitch, and I'm loosening my tension just a bit. So I'm going to start with 1 back stitch, and then I'm going to take a couple of stitches, and then, having this locked in place, I'm going to now start stitching by gathering the lace in, stretching the lace on to the tulle lace. Okay, now you can see you've got some room for adjustment here. So you can just go at a good pace. Take your pins out as you go, don't run over a pin. So you see everything's locked in place. 80% is a good ratio because it doesn't put a whole lot of tension onto the lace. I'm staying close to the edge of the lace. Stop with the needle down. Now we're on our 3rd section. Get rid of our pins. And then we're at the final section now. Let's give that lace a little tug. Make sure everything is parallel. Edge of lace, edge of elastic. And we're going to end with a back stitch. Okay, so we're half done. And there we are. You see, just a subtle lace. Now this would be good for, say, the leg of a pair of underpants, or a bra, or a light elastic waist. Now, if you've got some of this on the edge, you can always trim that off. when you're finished. But the important thing is that the elastic is secured to the lace, then you don't have any runoff. Now let's just align this again and do a nice edge stitch on the edge of the elastic. Now everything is in place, so we can just relax into this. Make sure that your lace is pulled through, that you're not getting anything caught up in the end, under the elastic. And then just follow with your eye, use your press-a-foot, and keep stretching. Guide it all through. And always let the machine do the work. And there we are. Nicely done. That's your 80% ratio. Now I wanted to say just a quick word about unpicking. If something goes wrong and you need to unpick, what I would do, and now we're working black on black, so this is going to be very difficult for me to see, but what I would suggest is that you find your stitch and then you pull out, say, every third stitch. You just, with your unpicker, now you see that's working quite well. But because we've used a longer stitch, it's not fighting, and it's cooperating quite well. So there you go. If you run into trouble, you can just unpick this easy, because number one, we've used a longer stitch, and number two, you're selecting every 2 or 3 stitches. So you're in position now to correct anything you've done wrong. So there we are. We've got an 80% ratio of gather, and that looks quite nice. One of the problems with working in lingerie is that you're having to cope with some very small pieces. And these pieces have shapes which aren't easily recognizable, but they each have built-in ease to form sculpture, and in this case, sculpture over the bust line. So here's a toile of a little sundress that I made, which I think goes some way to explain how you might approach these tricky problems. So I'm going to show you the pattern. Here's the pattern for the center front panel. Here's the pattern for the side front panel. Okay, so you can see what goes underneath the bust line. And here we have the pattern piece for the side front cup. And then here, finally, is the piece for the center front cup. Now it's hard to see how all these flat pattern pieces are going to be sewn together to create this sculpture. But I want to concentrate just on the cup. So let's apply this again. This is the side front, and this is the center front. Now looking at them flat, this is how they fit together. This is how the notches are placed together. So you can see what happens when they're flat, and then what has to happen when they're sewn together. And it's very easy to get things confused if you don't put them the right way around. So I think when you're working with lingerie, it's very important to understand how things are going to lay out, because you're going to mirror it again on this side. So when doing this, and I even get confused sometimes, what I realized is if I'm using the left front cup, there's a point on the bottom. The center front cup has a point on the top. So I just set that into my mind that when I'm putting these two shapes together, I wanted to get it right first time, so I just remembered that the point for the side front is on the bottom, and the point for the center front is on the top. Now let's look how this is going to be sewn together when we apply it on top of the lace. So now here we have our pattern all laid out. This is half of the bodice, and it consists of the lower bodice and the cups. They're the upper bodice. And you can see how intricate these pieces are and how easy it might be to get them wrong. So we've set up notches so that they sew together. Everything matches. You see there? You have to turn the pattern around, turn it upside down so that you're actually looking at it from the view of sewing it. And then, keeping that all straight, I've prepared already our lace pieces, which are going to be lined with a power net. And this is how this cup is going to be sewn together. Now, just a little bit about preparation. I have my power net on the underside, and I've basted, first of all, right down the center, and then I've pushed the lace out, and I've basted around the edges. Any excess I've trimmed away. And then I've given it another press to make sure everything is lying flat. I've done the same thing with the center front cup. First, a basting line right down the center, pushing the lace out gently, pressing it, and then tacking it with another set of basting stitches. So this is what it's going to look like. Let's take this away. Now we know we've got our point at the bottom for the side front, we've got our point at the top for the center front, and now we're ready to sew. It's very important that you lay all this out before you sew. I know it takes a lot of time. It's time we don't see in the sewing bee. They don't have that time. But now you can see how this center front cup has a little bit of ease in it, so that when it's all sewn together, you're going to have your cup all nicely put together. We can just turn the seam allowances in and you can see that a little bit better. There you are. So there you are. That's the rule I used. So I don't get it mixed up. Point at the bottom and point at the top. So whatever your pattern is, just try to find that relationship, where the meeting points are, and how you can remember them so that you can marry them onto the other side and you won't make any mistakes.